Dearly redheaded, we are choosing consciousness today to get through this thing called grief. Interesting word, grief. It means love, which makes for a mighty good joke, but I'm here to tell you, there's nothing else. Just joy. And if the big picture tends to bring you down, go crazy once your life goes. Woo!
I'm still with Dr. Bob Stein, and he was just able, in a very neat way, able to backtrack long-term dissociation and relate it back to PTSD and C-PTSD, if I may, and the concern for social isolation. Now I'm gonna I'm not looking for a therapy session, but my experiences are, and I worked 10 years on C-PTSD and really only started to make greater strides with it post losing my mom, because that's what enabled me to fully separate from the folks that were involved in my family that were still creating some problems for me, if you will. I don't need you to know more than that. And I had a massive dissociative event with a rage component that has been tied to C-PTSD. It's also been tied to, because I was dissociative for 5 days, my liver and kidneys, it's due to blood flow, were needed to be rejuvenated when I got into the hospital, and that took several days anyway. So I came out of that experience going, all right, what the hell happened? And I found someone, ironically, that specialized in dissociation and complex trauma. So I got very lucky. From there, I have continued to push my brain to find more comfort in my experiences. Like I got to the bottom of my wound, which is neglect. I got to the bottom of fairly recently that I had have disorganized attachment. Now, nobody told me that, but I was trying to figure out, I had this survival mode going on for decades. I was taking care of my mom, running a business, taking care of my kids. And after the kids left and mom left, I'm still having this issue. So I went down the rabbit hole and figured out it was disorganized attachment. It explains a lot. We don't necessarily have to discuss this. I'm just telling you this for where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because formally, I thought it was an ADHD component, because we have sold everybody on ADHD. But once and this is the spitballing, Bob. This is the follow the bouncing ball part. When I looked up disorganized attachment, and I had taken a test to figure that out, which was it was very helpful. Disorganized attachment is attached to long-term dissociation. So just really, really spitballing. When we diagnose so many people with ADHD, is there an argument that we've got a bunch of fucking disorganized attachment running amok that has materialized into something that now we attach symptoms to that are really come down to our childhood and our experiences with caregivers?
Well, I think the key thing you said there is attaching symptoms. ADHD is a collection of symptoms. Your listeners can look up, I think the author of this was Lynn Weiss, Weiss, and it's on one sheet of paper that I'll often hand out to clients, called 29 Positive Things About Having ADHD.
Good.
And of course, a lot of it has to do with right brain types of things, creativity and whatnot. But it's not just that. There's a whole bunch of things there. Let's take a second grader who is fairly gifted in spatial skills and is a future engineer, maybe architect, maybe draftsman, maybe artist, perhaps. So many successful career type of skills, maybe some skills like abstract art, not necessarily career type, but they're a very bright person. But that's where their primary skills lie. And there's not a whole lot of interest in what we might call left brain skills, which is reading, writing.
Amen,
and,
brother. Sing it.
and grade level arithmetic. Right. So,
Well, Common Core anyway.
right. So that person probably should be in enrichment classes for drafting and could probably learn at age 7 or 8 computer assisted design. But that's ignored, and they won't have any opportunity for that until maybe their junior year of high school. And in the meantime, they're fidgety because all the work that they're being given is stuff that they're not interested in. Okay, so they may get that ADHD label thrown at them. Switch it around to someone like myself who has no spatial skills, who gets disoriented very easily, terrible navigation skills, and yet the reading, writing, and math is pretty good. Well, no one thought I had ADHD because I sat there and did my work because it was easy. Now, when I got to high school and had to do things like physics, chemistry, and geometry, I failed almost all of them. But in elementary school, it's so left brain oriented that it's ignored.
Yeah.
Those sort of right brain types of things. So part of ADHD is not the attention deficit globally, it's attention deficit to things you're not interested in.
Right.
So and if the things you're interested in are left brain oriented, you're not going to have ADHD. If the things you're interested in are right brain oriented, you're going to have ADHD. All right. So that's one set of sort of misdiagnosis, if you want to call it that. And and then to think because they're kind of agitated in school and hopping and jumping around, you throw some Ritalin at them and it settles them down. So we figure, okay, they must have this condition because this stimulant drug we're giving them is settling them down. I don't know, not always the best idea. What I like to see with ADHD, with hyperactive children, is that there is some work being done now on environmental manipulations, such as like having fidgets available, having bouncy chairs, having sections of the room where kids can kind of crawl around, depending on their age, and having what are called study carrels. And you wouldn't use this for hours a day. You might use this for maybe 15 minutes at a time, where they sit in a little cubicle that is with some kind of little blinding walls, so that they can focus on a workbook or a work task or something like that. But that takes a different type of teacher training to work with that kind of a classroom. And I think that's going to be the future in how we deal with ADHD, in terms of designing environments that work best for these kids.
I couldn't.
But again, that's a subset of ADHD, of kids who are otherwise quite intelligent, but have skills in more of that right brain area versus left brain area. What you're talking about with attachment is different, because you say, well, but if it has nothing to do with right brain skills versus left brain skills, they just have poor bonding at home with their parents or with their caregivers. That's a different type of agitation. They don't feel secure.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
They don't feel secure. So now you're going to have behavioral issues. but it's going to present itself in the same way.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Bingo, bingo,
Right.
bingo.
Right. So
You discerned beautifully. I home run, because I went through the right brain, left brain ADHD thing with my kids in school behaviorally.
Academic ADHD or an emotional ADHD, symptom-wise, it still looks like ADHD because you have an unruly child, but the underlying reason is different. And a formal educational assessment should be able to figure that out when you look at the family dynamics and you look at test scores on right and left brain types of things. But you don't really see that. You don't necessarily see, okay, this is the diagnosis, these are the underlying reasons, and these are the recommendations. The recommendations tend to be kind of cookbook in a lot of these assessments.
I just think for myself, and I can speak to the C-PTSD element and working through it. Like I'm at the point where really nothing triggers me. Things will happen and I'll have a response to them. And sometimes I'm an hour or a day away from the real root of the matter. But I have been having sort of this, what when I describe it, it would sound like ADHD, and my joke is autistic with an ADHD kicker. But as an adult who learned to fawn, who learned to freeze, who developed C-PTSD from long-term chronic psychological intermittent abuse, this detachment thing materializes very, very similarly to what the typical person would think is an adult ADHD reaction. I mean, I have noticed behaviorally what I could once handle when the gun was to my head in survival mode, mom, kids, work. Now, I for some reason, I don't let work suffer, but the wiggle room is personal life, creative life, and social life. Mm-hmm. And I've been having, I still dissociate. I can't, and I think that may be tied to all the things I'm talking about on the podcast because they're highly emotional, and I'm trying to help spare others grief and get them on the path so they don't have to spend 10 years like I did immersed in figuring out what the hell was going on with C-PTSD. I'm trying to help things progress, but I was enamored that I could attach, no pun intended, my attachment to my adult symptoms that the typical person is saying it's ADHD, and it's not. And especially, in being a woman, a right brain woman, I might add.
Well, and an attachment, we're talking about the first years of life. Anyone, I have, little grandchildren now that I watch a couple of days a week, and you just feel attachment when they're a year and a half old and 2 years old, and you see them starting to talk and engage and all that, and you can see where it can go awry with caregivers or parents who hit the kids at a very young age, or ignore them, or don't talk to them, or don't read to them, or don't play with them, and all that, and how it just affects that developing bond over the years, and that can unfortunately have lifetime consequences.
We're not disagreeing, but in my particular case, and again, wanting to relate to other people, I had the childhood thing with mom and dad. It was siblings, hot and cold, and then long-term marriage, hot and cold. I had learned the hot and cold from my siblings, and then married somebody who was hot and cold. And I'm saying that assuming you know what I mean. Just, a little bit of attention, and, I would ride that wave. I had learned to ride the breadcrumbs, and I had learned to just, understand other people's problems. I'm incredibly empathetic towards what made other people the way they were. And I just was stuck there for decades trying to, what my brain thought was normal. I had no idea until relatively recently. So I don't disagree with the there's a Dr. Shore, I can't remember his first name. He does a great job talking about that early attachment.
Early attachment, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why they call it early attachment. Their attachment theory talks about early attachment, middle childhood attachment, and adult attachment issues. But yeah, unpredictable behaviors from either, it could be spouse, it could be child, parent. When you get those unpredictable behaviors, that's when, you talk about the hot and cold thing. You never know what to expect from that other person.
Nope.
And that puts you in a state of arousal, not sexual arousal, but just bodily arousal. That's unhealthy.
Yeah, and one of the things, and this is where, I'm comfortable with you, so I don't mind being totally ignorant. Tell me I'm,
Yeah.
And also I forgot the last time, and I wanted to tell you this time, one of my personas is Amy G. Dalla, amygdala.
Oh, that took a second.
Now we're back to the sapiosexual bullshit. But anyway, so you had educated me that scans don't show activity. Like if I had a C-PTSD reaction and ran to a brain scan, the brain wouldn't show anything.
Right, that's right.
But I am very intrigued by the hippocampus and the amygdala because I'm wondering, do the long-term effects of abuse... See, it's ironic because I've read that the hippocampus in an autistic is larger, and then I've read long-term abuse reduces the hippocampus. So maybe I net have an average hippocampus.
well, you're talking about, there's structure and function.
Right.
So you could have structural differences, but you could also have two hippocampi that are identical in size, but one's less active and one's more active. And, in terms of identifying brain response to triggers, there are laboratory setups in which you can do that, where you can put someone on a functional MRI machine, not a regular MRI, but a functional MRI machine that does measure activity in the brain. And you can give them a series of neutral trigger words or images and very emotion stimulating trigger words and images. And you can see how the brain responds or what parts of the brain respond to those triggers. And there are studies like that in the literature. And they do find that people with PTSD do react differently. Now, in terms of which particular areas react differently, I'm not sure. That's something that you could research. But there are differences in brain responses.
Well, here's my question, and I've thought about doing that, but I would imagine if you have no baseline for the size of your hippocampus, like...
Oh, well, the way to get around that, yes, you're not going to have a baseline. But what researchers do to get around that is what they have are population baselines.
Okay.
So you would have, samples from a couple of hundred people in the general population who have no sign of PTSD. And of course, there's going to be lots of variation there, all right? But that becomes your baseline. And you're comparing that to people that
like a mean average.
Yeah, an average with a standard deviation. So you get a measure of variability. Now, if that variability measure is really high, then it's very hard to make comparisons. But if the measure of variability is fairly low, then you can make comparisons. So, population baselines are not great, but they're better than having no baseline at all.
Do you foresee us making greater strides in this arena that I don't know what's possible. So I don't, and as much as I want to research it, I just don't think it's my fish to fry. I just know the struggles that the struggles that I would have expected to be gone. I'm only just really realizing, like I really realize how my memory's been affected, like big time. And I know that's associated with long-term dissociation, and I know the brain's protecting itself, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. But when go ahead.
Yeah, the possibility of magical treatment to prevent PTSD, I think, is much more possible with discrete trauma. So, a person is otherwise healthy, no major issues, and then they experience a terrible trauma, a rape, death of a very close person, and they witnessed it. House burns down, and they had to escape a terrible fire. Some kind of discrete, horrible trauma. And then, very shortly after that trauma, they're administered some kind of a substance which affects the processing of that trauma in the brain. Now, that substance does not exist right now, but I could imagine something like that existing in the near future. That would not address complex PTSD, which is, long-term abuse types of things. I don't see that being, addressed medically. That, prevention is the cure there. It has to be interrupted early in the process.
I've thought about hypnosis, quite frankly.
And to accomplish what?
Oh boy, do I want to answer that question? Well, in my case, which is not unusual, which is why I'm doing this podcast, because I want people to understand the magnitude of C-PTSD over decades of covert psychological abuse. I'm in a situation where I don't have a lot to do with my family. I got out of my marriage. I've done a lot of healing work, but now I have an issue. I didn't stand up to my abusers till I was an adult, and I had formed relationships with my sons that cross over to people who mistreated me. And estrangement is on the rise with a lot of this stuff, people facing their abuse, and you want to have a voice, you want to be able to scream it from the rafters, but I'm now continuing to injure on one level, not deliberately, but make my sons uncomfortable because I don't want to have a lot to do with people that did some serious psychological damage. So my goal with them is see whoever you want to see, but that whole group of people is remarkably comfortable with me not having much with my sons, which is, of course, how it would play out, if you will, of course. And I saw it coming. But it's incredibly painful to live with.
Yeah.
So, and it's on the rise, and rage in women is on the rise. So my interest in C-PTSD is personal, but also because I know I'm not unique.
Oh, no, you're not unique at all. No. And, in a previous discussion, we talked about, is it C-PTSD or PTSD? And the reason that distinction was made was because in the older diagnostic formulations for PTSD, there had to be a discrete life-threatening trauma. But that has changed. It doesn't have to be a discrete trauma. It can be cumulative trauma over time. So there no longer necessarily needs to be the distinction between PTSD and C-PTSD. It's just diagnosed as PTSD, exposure to trauma, whether discrete, one time, or long-term, and all of the psychological and physical consequences of that.
I hear you, but I like that C. And I also like post-traumatic stress injury better than disorder. But I mean, for people to get help, the domestic violence community, I dare say, gets this pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But
Sure.
but I don't see it when it comes to getting a restraining order. The damage to the brain, we still can't. I have a woman coming on in a few weeks who is speaking to the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, the amygdala.
Okay.
She's coming on and she's going to hit those points with me, and I didn't want to
Well, good.
drive
good.
you nuts with this stuff. But if we
No,
can't,
that's okay. Because when it comes to brain effects of domestic violence, I'm not going to be near the expert that the other person you're talking about is going to be. So that's fine.
no, and I am very glad it came up because you're you're one of the more, dare I say, confident psychologists that I've talked to that will spitball with me, and I hope it's been clear to our audience. You in no way. I'm trying to share what your years of experience have helped with PTSD and dementia and Alzheimer's and go into your realm. But my realm, as I think you know, and now everybody else knows, well, they know because of what the fuck I talk about. But it's like I had an issue with getting a restraining order, just somebody who harasses me intermittently, but enough that, it should be over by now. It's been 50 years.
Yeah.
And I can laugh. I do laugh. But it's, it's gotten to the point where I get teased about not having more with my sons, which is just particularly cruel, as you can well imagine.
Yeah, sure.
So I just wanted a restraining order. Just, hey, please stop this. And they said, we can't do anything if there's no physical harm or threat of physical harm. I said, what's more threatening than psychopathy and sociopathy? And they looked at me like I had two heads. There were a couple people that understood the magnitude, but were still like, and someone else called it a slippery slope. I said, I don't think that's a slippery slope at all. That puts a line in the sand that if we had more of that stuff, we wouldn't have people torturing one another.
Yeah. The other thing with that is, you're not charging the person with a crime. You're not putting them in jail. So you're just saying, stay away from this person.
Exactly.
Right? That's all you're doing. So because of a pattern of harassment. And it shouldn't have to involve a particular threat to life or something like that.
Thank you, Bob.
I mean, we'll look at it this way. Stalking is a crime. Okay. and what is stalking? Stalking can just be you're staring at the person, you're showing up at their work, you're driving slowly past their house, you're parked in the parking lot outside of their job for no apparent reason. That's stalking. No threat to life. All right. No physical threat. Stalking is a crime. So if stalking is a crime, then why can't you get a restraining order for all of these behaviors that have nothing to do with overt threat?
I'm trying to do a little. I mean, there's many things that I'm trying to do something about, but I agree, and I don't see it being a slippery slope. Even if somebody
all there, no.
Even, I mean, you would stop even false accusations, because even if somebody falsely accused somebody else and wanted a restraining order, there you solve that problem too.
Well, right. If someone's falsely accused of something that results in a restraining order, but that restraining order has nothing to do with a criminal offense, a criminal record, or anything like that, why is it even an issue then? So, I don't see the slippery slope.
This goes back to our first conversation where you put the guy who's shouting out at the end of the hall.
Yeah.
Just some of these things, people, and it would cut down on catfishing. I mean, I was catfished in real life. People call it gaslighting, but it's just an extension of catfishing. They're so similar.
I often encourage people to watch the original movie Gaslight, and they can learn all about what it's like.
Yep. One doctor coined it in our society, mass lighting.
I still like gaslighting.
Yeah, I hear you. I didn't catch it. It took me. I was late to that party. That one took me decades to get, and Gaslight
was my grandmother's favorite movie.
My mother told me about the movie. I can't bring myself to watch it because I still, as much as I have forgiven myself for my tolerance and enabling of it because I didn't know it was happening, and also being on the spectrum played a huge part. You can imagine how much fun people had gaslighting me.
It was it was a very famous movie in 1944 because I think it hit home with a lot of people. I mean, who in the world was talking about manipulation in domestic situations in the 1940s? Nobody was talking about it. And here, this movie kind of focused just on that, of the manipulation of an individual by a person who wanted to make them think they were insane.
Yeah. And I am, in my book, Laughs Though I Don't Die, I am going to be writing about it. And again, it's not to upset my kids. It's not to make those who mistreated me, I know they're wounded. I get all that. But again, I'm going to do it from a perspective of having been totally indoctrinated into what I then would accept. It's mortifying what I accepted. Mortifying. The outside person once in a while could give me some insight, but again, the spectrum component just made it, just compounded it.
Yeah. Well, and channeling what you experienced to educating others, very valuable.
I think so. I hope so. It's what it's why I'm doing this. I mean, that's Spare Grief, Insight Joy. It was a real friggin' calling, and so all right. Believe it or not, we're done.
All right.
And if we think of more topics, and I'm sorry we didn't laugh more.
Okay.
But think of Amy G. Dalla, and
yes.
I hope I have some wings with that one.
Yes. Keep in touch.
I will. You too. Right. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Be well.
Thank you for listening and supporting Natural Born Redhead. If you follow the bouncing balls, please like and subscribe. If you know someone interested in sparing others grief and inciting joy, message me on Facebook or reach out via my website, Natural Born Redhead. J-Ma.